Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Clinic Gym Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Josh Satterlee, and I'm joined today by Dr. Tom Teter. Tom, how are you, buddy?
Excellent. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. Now, for those listening, you might hear Tom cough and sneeze. He's just recovering from a cold, but in classic Tom fashion, he pushed through. He checked his load management scores, and he's okay to perform for this hour, right?
I am solid.
Yeah,
ready to
good.
go.
Well, that's all based on heart rate variability and previous load in newtons that you've calculated, I'm sure. But we can get to that later.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so Tom, you're a chiropractor out in basically Kansas City, Missouri. You operate in a kick butt gym. I basically have it kind of wrapped up there.
Yeah, I'm in Kansas City. I am in a gym that's about 12,000 total square feet. We have a pretty unique situation with our space where we have one facility, but it's kind of spread into two different sides. And on one side, we have your standard gym equipment, like your pay-for membership gym. And on the other side of the gym, we have our more functional training space where we have a jungle gym station, turf, racks, and an aerobics classroom for multiple use classes. So we have a pretty sweet setup here. Nice.
It's kind of like performance on one side and the classic weight loss fitness on the other.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Well, the other thing that you have that we kind of haven't talked about yet is you have this little tiny project called Rehab to Fitness, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and it's not so tiny. We talked last year about this time, and I basically was talking to you in the delivery room of your new product, right? You had just taken it home from the hospital, just been born, and now it's grown a full year. You've had classes, you've run people through it, you've refined your program. How's that going?
It's going well. I think anytime you take something new to market, it's a challenge for growth. And I think also, as you know, when you're trying to introduce what you and I think are standard topics, but when you're trying to introduce the idea of fitness to a group of clinicians in our profession in chiropractic who really, this may be somewhat of a foreign language, it takes a little time to start to crack through the veneer and kind of get them on board with this is something we really should be doing. All of our clinicians should be talking about this and performing these things and acting in these ways. So
I got a buddy who sells software, and he says in software, there's always the rule of threes. Whatever you think you're going to develop takes 3 times as long and costs 3 times as much.
And that's, I don't know about the cost side of it, but really the 3 times as long is pretty accurate. I had no delusions that this is something that was going to take off overnight. In our first entire 12 months, I think we had 5 classes, which is pretty good for a first year class. Yeah. And then I think we have upwards of 16 dates scheduled in 2020. So we've definitely had some growth, and it's still just quite a challenge to get the word out and let people know about our class and how it's different, and trying to get other clinicians to think like someone like you and me.
Right. Well, it's a scary idea for them to think like us, but they can at least think about rehab and fitness. So basically, for those people who have no idea what it is, the class, can we go through real quick, like what you cover and what the goal of the class is?
Sure. Originally the class was twofold. I think I wanted to get clinicians thinking about what do we do after we release someone from care, or what should be a standard of care as part of my musculoskeletal practice. Now, there are a lot of people, I think, that practice more traditional chiropractic or musculoskeletal care where it's all passive modalities like manipulation, ultrasound, et cetera. And there's nothing wrong with those things. I'm not suggesting that's the case. But as we know, and we look at the research, that there's a large preponderance of people who actually benefit from acquiring load. And what I mean by load is resistance. We need to start to load tissues to make them more resilient to stress. And usually it's inability to tolerate load that gets them injured in the first place. And so when I started thinking about the class, I wanted to, get clinicians thinking about, what is fitness? How does that integrate into my current musculoskeletal practice? And then secondly, to teach them from start to finish what that looks like. So in our class, right now we're sitting at about 18 to 20 modules that I've created for the course. We start with everything from what is fitness, how to create a interdisciplinary team of people that are all working in a musculoskeletal paradigm. We teach you how to create a system from start to finish of how you take people either from the treatment table into the gym, or if they're coming in off the street with just a basic performance goal, how to start them and get them through the program. And then we just start chipping away at, here's how you go about programming, and here's how you go about exercise selection, and here's how you go about choosing progressions and regressions for each individual person. And as we do that and demonstrate, I think we have upwards of 400 exercises included in our exercise library. And as we teach them and demonstrate these exercises, we're giving you literally a start to finish plug and play plan to implement this into your clinics. So I think it's a pretty thorough class. I've been impressed with the feedback we've had so far, because a lot of our class attendees have taken other types of fitness courses and have suggested that this is one of the most comprehensive courses they've had as far as exercise programming and design that they've.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations.
I appreciate that. It's been a long road, but I think we still got a lot of work to do.
Yeah. The reason, I love it because, here's a couple stories. Like, number one, I remember listening to, Greg Rose played a big role as a mentor to me. And he was saying one time, the biggest delineator between great chiros, physical therapists, and even strength coaches, he said the biggest delineator between the great ones and the okay ones is the knowledge of the lower level exercises, like how to make things easier. Basically, any dummy can just add more weight or add more reps or add more speed, and it'll make things harder. He's like, but really breaking it down to getting that little bit of getting that bridge from where the person is to where where you think they need to be. And, I've seen these clinicians that are like, yeah, I treated so-and-so's low back, and then for rehab, I gave them squats. And I'm like, God dang, man, that to me just sounds like you jumped about 18 steps, like he might have needed it, but my gut tells me that you're missing some steps there. And I love the fact that you're truly bridging that from essentially from what do you do on the table to what do they do when they're on the lifting platform?
Well, one of the things we talk about in class, you just touched on a ton of things that I think are relevant. I think first and foremost is that we are trying to bridge the gap from their current capacity. What can you do right now? Into their desired competency. What do you want to do? And so if someone, for instance, in that analogy, if someone has low back pain, we're treating them clinically for the pain, for whatever you're doing to accomplish that. And then all of a sudden we throw them into a squat. Well, a squat is a very high threshold, high stimulus load. And I don't know that they're ready to tolerate that. So we have to have incremental steps along the way, or we need to find what's the smallest meaningful change I can make to one variable in their program to slowly and systematically progress them towards that goal. And so a lot of times in your analogy, people will jump from what is really for instance, let's say we're doing a bird dog as an example. Maybe that's a low to low moderate threshold stimulus. And all of a sudden they're doing barbell back squats with 315 pounds. And I'm like, hang on a second. You guys missed a lot of steps along the way. And we need to make sure that we're checking off every little box so that we make sure that they don't regress back into pain. So part of the things we talk about in class is we have an entire system of progressions and regressions for every single pattern. And then once we show you how to regress back to the right landing spot for that individual client or patient, then I can show you how to strategically manipulate one of 9 variables that will give you the outcome that you're looking for. So I think when we're talking about load, you have to have a way, regardless of how you do it, if it's my way or some other way, you have to have a way to make sure you're getting the person in the right landing spot for load acquisition, and that you're giving them the smallest, most meaningful change you can to progress them towards our goals.
I love it. Now let's, I know you're going to hate this part. We're going to brag a little bit about you. So you got this class, and then interesting over the last year, I think you've had, from my perspective, you've had 2 areas where you really got to, so let's back up a second. Tom, how long have you been in practice?
This will be going almost on next December. It'll be 16 years.
16 years. All right, cool.
Yeah.
And how long have you really, did you come into it as a strength coach, or did the strength and fitness knowledge come after chiropractic college?
No, I came in backwards. Like I have always been a strength coach in some capacity. And I just kind of realized when I was doing the work I was doing that there was still something missing. And so I wanted to go find other information.
The best is when trainers become chiros or PTs, I always think it's because you realized what your limitation was. It was tissue tolerance or something like that, that you didn't have the license to change. I love that. So you came in with a lot of fitness knowledge. Obviously you've gained more over the last few years. You developed this rehab to fitness model, and then the program, and then the class, and you start teaching everybody. And then, you had two kind of, I don't know what you want to say, labs to put it into. I know you had a great story about working with a local small D2 university, D3 university. It had what every D3 university has. We want to win. We have no money. We have no facilities, but basically do everything you can to help us.
Right. Well, I was, part of, like I said, I've always been a strength coach. I went to chiropractic school I always say the best thing I ever did for my coach my career as a strength coach was become a chiropractor, because it allowed me to look at the body and loading differently than if I was just looking from my meathead strength coach lens. And along the way in doing that and having the knowledge that I have from becoming a chiropractor,
I picture you reading the green books in one hand and dumbbell curl with the other hand,
While standing on a Bose 2 ball with my eyes closed, absolutely.
For sure. Hashtag functional, my man.
Functional. I was very fortunate that along the way, I started teaching a class at a local university, Park University here in Kansas City, Missouri. I was an adjunct, and I kind of fell into this situation where they were looking to start a fitness and wellness degree program from scratch. So I was tasked with, they gave me a one-sheet piece of paper that had a list of classes that we kind of thought we might want to teach on it. And I developed an entire 4-year curriculum teaching basically fitness and wellness, or teaching undergrads how to be strength coaches. And in doing that, I got to start to work with some of the sports teams at the university. And one of the best stories that we had was, and I think this goes to show that all the systems that we teach in the class can actually work in real time. I became friends with the soccer coach, and he had I think it was the 2017 season. They had the highest number of injuries for any team in Park University history. And he's like, look, I'm not sure why people are getting hurt. I really would like your help in trying to figure this out. So we had numerous conversations, and the number one thing we kind of decided early was not just that we need to know how you move, so we should probably screen these guys, but we discovered that the majority of the reason why I felt they were getting injured was because they were doing way too much load. And so what we did in the 2018 season is the only thing we changed during the soccer season was they kind of did a demo, a beta test for us. I developed, and one of my partners developed, an app called Ready Athlete, and it's a subjective monitoring app for athletics. And so they demoed and beta tested our app for the entire soccer season. And at the end of the season, we were shocked because the prior season in 2017, I believe, and don't quote me on the exact numbers because I've forgotten, but they had somewhere upwards of like 217 visits to the athletic training room for injury.
Wow.
And the 2018, that's a lot for a soccer team with 35 guys on it. And in 2018, they had 7. And if I recall, of those 7, most of them were abrasions, contusions, things like that. They only had one musculoskeletal injury, and a guy had a sprained ankle because he got slide tackled during a game.
Yeah.
So
you can't do anything about the contusions and all that stuff. That's Rubbins racing, like you got to accept that. But I think the fact, so it went from, what'd you say, 260 down to 7?
It was like 217-ish visits to down to 7 is what we were able to calculate.
Wow. That's incredible.
And look, it is incredible, and I'm very proud of that. One of the challenges that we had, to be honest, was, as you know, in a lot of NAIA schools, record keeping is not always the best because you have 1 or 2 athletic trainers who are dealing with 350 athletes. So some of their injury statistics aren't always the tightest, but the best that we could calculate based on the information we had was that we went from around 217 to 7. That's substantial. And the only thing we did different.
Let's say that it was only half that it was only 108 down to 7. Either way, you won. Like,
of course. Yeah. It's a win-win.
Yeah.
We didn't expect
I just want to say for those young doctors listening, a common misconception I think that occurs is people say like, oh, this little university nearby wants some help and they don't have any money and I need to get paid for my time. One of the best things you can do is launch a program at a small university, because your resume afterwards will read blah, blah, blah at this university, at Park University. Now, on your resume, the size of the university does not matter. It could be Park University. It could be Parker University. It could be, Texas A&M. Any university work looks really good on the resume to get future university or professional sports team work. The great news, as you're hearing with Tom, like basically the reason that this worked is because you knew the soccer coach. And one of the wonderful things at smaller universities is how fast they can move. You want to go into Texas A&M and talk about like implementing load management with all their athletes and running the FMS beforehand. You're looking at probably 2 years of working with legal and the athletic director long before you actually test a single athlete, right?
Of course.
Yeah, and you were able to do it within like a 5-minute conversation over Chick-fil-A or something.
It's 100% right. I was able to look. The grand thing for us was the amazing thing was the coach knew he needed help. The athletic training staff was overstretched because that's just what happens in an NAIA school. And so he got to bring in someone like me and kind of lean on my expertise. And, when he said, what's the one thing you would change it before anything else? I was like, look, you guys are just doing too much stuff. They had 2/3 of their injuries in the preseason, in the first 4 weeks from August 1st to September 1st when they started their league play. And what we figured out was the guys were coming in from the summer out of shape. They hadn't been working out over the summer. The coach felt the need to get them in shape. And so they were doing 2 practices a day for 2.5 hours at a time. And most of that consisted of running. And so when I showed him the research on injury timing for preseason in soccer, I was like, look, here's what we need to do. You're only going to have 1 practice a day. We're going to cut that other practice out. And all of your conditioning is just going to be short-sided games. And so we started off the first 2 weeks of the season just playing 10 by 10 yard skill scrimmage games. And then the second 2 weeks, we went from 10 by 10 to 25 by 25. And so by the time they got up to the point when the season started, they hadn't accumulated those massive amounts of training load. And the guys were fresh and starting to get fit and able to perform at a high level. So we just started applying some logic to load management, and we had massive results. And the thing that's great is, and I talk about this in the Rehab to Fitness class, is you don't have to use my app, or you don't even have to use technology. I teach you in the class exactly the formulas we use to calculate load. And I just happened to be lucky that I had a patient who was a app developer, and he coded it into an app for me. But when we do it in class, I'll show you exactly the formulaic equation that we use. And then you can take this information and go to other high schools or universities and help them kind of master load management. So we were very fortunate.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of what we did. And I think it expresses itself in the class, pretty successfully.
Hey, I want to tell you all about Membrant. Membrant, with a D in there like Rembrandt. Membrant is an app platform. Now, this company is the one who built the Clinic Gym Hybrid app. And if you purchase our accelerator program, you will get firsthand knowledge of what they do. But I think this is the next evolution in clinics who want to really give their patients better care, better service, while making it more convenient. So what Membrant can do is help you design a custom app for your company. This isn't just like rebranding somebody else's. This is your app that lives on the App Store and your patients can download. Now, what's the power of an app? Well, let's just say, for example, that you have a certain protocol that you want your low back pain patients to go for. So let's say you include the McGill Big 3, a little talk about repetitive motions and finding your kind of McKenzie protocol of reducing your pain through those repetitive asymptomatic movements. Well, you could tag the patients, meaning that you kind of put them on a list that says you want them to have access to the low back protocols, right? And then you could have another program of videos, articles, exercise descriptions, all that only go out to your patients with shoulder pain, right? Or ones that go out to patients with plantar fasciitis. If you can build that program, then what Membrane can help you do is make sure that only the patients that really need the plantar fasciitis exercises get that delivered to their phone. That thing that they're staring at, some estimates say as many as 500 times a day. All right. So check out membrant.com, or send me an email. I can hook you up with those guys and they can put together a fantastic program. I think it's really the future, and it's one more way that technology will help you make more money while providing better care and a better business model. So check out membrant.com. I'd read in a book one time by a guy named Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel was one of the guys that founded PayPal back in the day. And he said in this book called 0 to 1, he talks about thinking inside the box. And he said that like the parameters you have to operate in are what determine how successful you be. And if you can come up with a solution in a box, don't think outside the box. Like, and the reason this matters here is working at a D3 university gets to show you how good you frickin' are, because you have no money for any new equipment, no money for, $50,000 Sparta kits or whatever, like to just test people and all this. You had to do this with just what you could do with the soccer team and a few spreadsheets, and what change could you make in 1 year's time, right? You had to stay within those parameters. There was no chance at like, well, let's install a few different water treadmills and some, what are those 0G treadmills to take the load off their legs as they run more. Like, those weren't an option. You just had to use your brain. And I think this comes back to fitness. Like, I remember talking to Jason Glass one time, and he said, like, here's how you can check if a fitness, if somebody understands fitness, is like go into a convention space and be like, you have 40 people in this room, construct a workout for them. And if they're like, well, I need some kettlebells, or I need this and sandbags, or it's like, no, you got nothing. What can you do? And then, they should be able to put together a workout that's going to get everybody smoked in an hour's time. If they can do that, or they can be like, all right, I'll give you 12 folding chairs. What can you do now? Like little things like that, they should still be able to do it, rather than these people that can only operate when they have the perfect equipment, or they're always buying new equipment because they need to achieve some exercise goal. And I'm like, dude, you don't understand the concept here, So it's awesome to test yourself by doing this at a small university. And I'm just saying that for the people out there listening that might be next to, University of North Central Pennsylvania Annex, like, go build those relationships. You'll never know what may come of them.
Well, I agree with one of the things you said. Is like, I always teach to my students anyway, is like everyone in our profession wants to look at the new trendy technology or the new trendy piece of equipment and always think outside the box. And I was like, look, if you talk to people like me, my box is really small. Like, I have some very core concepts that I stick with, and I just try to master the basics and execute those things flawlessly. And I think that's what we did. A lot of the concepts that we were espousing to are things that people that you and I respect have taught us, and we're just taking that information and applying it in the environments where they don't have the resources to have these larger pieces of equipment. And that's one of the reasons, frankly, why we developed our app. Was we were finding that if you go to a large university, for instance, we're close to MU or KU, University of Missouri, University of Kansas, they have huge athletic department budgets where they can have things like an Omega Wave that cost $100,000 to use with the football team. So then you go, what do you do for the NAI schools whose athletes have all the exact same needs, but have 1/100th of the budget? Like, you have to have resources for those people too. And so we just went in and again, one of the things we teach in our classes, we followed a very simple system. You want to screen people, protect them from movements or activities that might be painful, correct dysfunction, develop fitness, acquire skill, manage load, and then make sure that people don't get hurt. Like, it's a very simple system if you do it effectively. So you don't need a ton of fancy equipment. And the same thing goes for fitness. I think I've told you the story. I started my very first adult fitness class with 4 people in a room or space that was probably about 150 square feet. And we rocked out those workouts for about 4 years. And those same people are now training with me in this much larger space, but I've had 10 to 12 years of longitudinal loading with these people. And some of them are now in their 60s that are fitter than when they were in their 50s and 40s with very little equipment that we had access to. So I know one of the things I've heard on some of your other podcasts, and I think this is one of the pieces of pushback we probably get when we start introducing this model, is I don't have a lot of space and I don't have a lot of equipment. You don't need it. You just need to know how to program and make sure that people are in the right progression, and then you strategically manipulate the variables. I think the amount of equipment I started with was probably less than $300. So it absolutely.
Dude, I worked out a high school golf team. We had maybe 800 square feet. It's 12 guys on the team. And when we do sprints and stuff, it was in the parking lot. Like, I didn't have anything. And it was like mini bands. The only thing I remember is mini bands, sliders, and foam rollers. That's it. And one of those dudes went on to play on the web.com and PGA Tour. Like, give me a break. Like, he did great. When people are focused on the space, it's like, dude, you're focused on the wrong piece here. Like, you
can the wrong stuff.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to beat these guys up about this, but like, don't ever let that stuff restrict you. And if you're a young chiro, like you just graduated or something, find a little university around you and see what you can do, or you'll be amazed at how welcoming they are. And that's a great thing about sports, as I've said, and you've heard me say this in classes, like, it's a great equalizer. Like, when you're good and you help a team, nobody gives a shit about your license. Nobody cares if it's PT, DC, MD. They just care they're winning, their guys are healthy, and wherever they go, you're going to go too. You have an all-access pass, I think people get intimidated by that sometimes. Go ahead.
I would also just I 100% agree. I will also maybe interject and suggest that you just have to be overly careful about how you present information to different people. There was at some point a little bit of pushback from the athletic training staff at the university because they felt like we were making them look bad because, they had all these injury rates and hadn't necessarily done anything about it. And we came in and did what we did. And again, when you're getting into these multidisciplinary environments, you have, with our DC license, and if you take additional courses like screening in the FMS and the SFMA, TPI, and all these things that we're learning, you have so much of a skill set that either athletic trainers don't have yet, or they just don't have the time to do. But it's all about how you go and present that information. And you want to try to create allies, not enemies. And so I would highly agree with everything you're saying.
I think, by the way, Tom, if there is a young chiro out there listening, would you mind if they reach out to you if they're going to be launching a program like this?
No, absolutely not. I would encourage them to.
Yeah. We'll definitely include your contact information in the show notes, but if you can what's the best way to get a hold of you? We're not ending this here. I just want to throw it out right now in case anyone needs it.
I would just usually social media. We're Engineering Athletes on Facebook, or that's my private business, is Engineering Athletes. Yeah. You can reach me at Rehab the Fitness on Facebook, and I'm also both of those same things on Instagram and Twitter. Cool. So, yeah.
I want to move on to lab number 2 here. So you had this Park University thing that went well with the soccer team. Everything went well. I know you also had to kind of, I don't know what you want to say it, have a little courage to go in a totally new sport, because I may have had a hand in pushing you that way. But in this last year, you really started working with some competitive golfers and golf pros, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So up to that point, how much understanding of the game of golf did you have?
0.
Okay. So and then you had knowledge on how to get golfers better, but how was that experience the first time you started working with them? Because obviously you had the skills, but there is that, and I'm asking this for those young chiros out there, maybe going into a new market or something. You certainly had the skills to fix people, but the language is a little different. The approach is a little different. The assumptions are a little different. Yeah. Can you talk about some of those things?
Yeah, of course. I have been fortunate in my career to work with athletes from almost every sport that you could imagine, really, except I hadn't seen a lot of golfers. And I knew from my other experience and the things that I had done that one of the first things you can do to kind of broach that conversation is just do a very basic movement screen and find where people have painless dysfunctions and correct those things. I didn't have a tool or a language to understand how to relate that to golf until I talked to you, and you were doing a sports elective here in Kansas City. This has probably been about a year now. And you encouraged me to go take the TPI class. So I, again, knowing nothing about golf, showed up and was really blown away at the depth of the material that they had for screening golfers. Now, I've even said, even recently, like, having taken the SFMA multiple times, everything when we're working with clients and patients kind of goes back to that anyway. But adding that extra layer of understanding the language of golf and understanding some of the specific terminology allowed me to communicate the things that I already knew better to the people who were in the sport. And it also opened up an ability to work with professional coaches in that sport. I was very fortunate to meet Coach Maureen Olson, who you introduced me to when we were at the TPI class. And we started doing some work together because she had clients that needed care, and I'm here in town. And I mean, I've been shocked at the results that we've had up to date. As an example, I just got a text message from her before you called me in, and we had a guy that we were working on who had to stop playing golf because he was having massive low back pain, a younger guy in his late 30s. And after 2 weeks of conservative care, he's now back in a golf lesson today, and he had added 35 yards to his drive just from us getting his body moving more efficiently. So when you're a young clinician getting out of school and you don't think when a coach sends you a text message saying, hey, I'm totally shocked that this guy couldn't play golf 2 or 3 weeks ago and now he just drove the ball 35 yards further, that doesn't have some psychological impact on their ability to want to give you business, you're crazy. So it's really just opened up this world of things with golf, even to the point to where we are lucky now. We realized that there was a huge need for, from a performance perspective, for golfers to get into fitness-related classes. So we started over the December month, we started a golf fitness class at a local space here, and we were able to generate about $6,500 worth of revenue in just 1 month from getting clients signed up for golf fitness services. So we've really opened up this world of what performance can look like for golf. And that's just following the models of things like TPI and people like Greg Rose. But to your point, like, I have no formal experience in golf. I don't even play. I'm not going to say as far as I don't like the game. I'm totally fascinated by it. I'm just not good at it. But now having an ability to have a language to talk to those people has been game changing for my ability to see those people as clients.
Yeah. Well, you kind of, funny enough, you were working as far on the other side of the spectrum in sports, because you were working with a few semi-pro and pro MMA fighters, right?
Yeah. I mean, at that point in time, the majority of my pro athletes were all UFC MMA people.
That's awesome.
So it's on the exact opposite. It's the exact opposite of golf. Golf, you need finesse and patience, and you do obviously need strength and power. But MMA is people beating people up, and I love it. But that was my experience, and I think what I would impress to some of your listeners, and obviously a lot of them probably know some of this, but is having that education from TPI and language and terminology allowed me to take the things that I already knew how to do well and communicate that with players and coaches. And we've had astronomical results. I'm pretty happy about that.
That's awesome, dude. So let's, I want to dive in a little bit. Going into a new market, what was one assumption you heard from, coaches or players or something that just made your jaw almost drop?
Oh man. I think the one thing I thought personally was that golfers had no interest in fitness. And I think what I quickly found out was that it wasn't that they didn't have interest. It's that everything that they had been told about fitness as it relates to golf had typically been wrong. And so we just had to go back and re-educate them. Like,
Tom, you and I both know muscle, getting strong makes you tight, and you can't be flexible if you're too strong. Like,
Well, it can't. That can happen if you have a poor training program, but in a well-designed, thoughtful training program, your coach would make sure that you have all the elements necessary to make sure that doesn't happen.
I mean, Tiger Woods, he's no slouch in the muscle department, and he's no slouch in the flexibility department. You know, like it's a perfect example. Adam Scott, same way. Like Dustin Johnson, same way. These guys are amazing. What's now going in MMA? Working in MMA and UFC, I'm sure it's like you're taking a glass that's 93% full of fitness and just trying to polish it up. But in golf, a lot of times you're taking a glass that's, 4% full of fitness. And that's just because they, walked from the clubhouse to their car.
Right.
What are some of the big changes you see right away? Or some, they say small hinges swing big doors. Like what have been some of your big successes from relatively small interventions?
The two things right off the bat that I think have made the biggest change for what we've done is focusing a lot of our efforts on hips and thoracic spine. I would say almost 100% of the people that I've had come from Coach Maureen that I've screened or that I've worked with have lacked hip internal and external rotation or both, and thoracic spine motion. So just the first thing we do when we do our fitness classes, we do we do a warm up. And as part of the warm up, we hammer thoracic spine and hips. And I think that's made a massive difference in their ability to move into those ranges of motion. And now that they're able to move more efficiently into those ranges, not only is we're noticing that, and this is all verifiable by video, is that their skill acquisition during their golf lessons is occurring faster, but they're actually having more force production without us ever even having loaded those tissues yet. So hammering mobility in thoracic spine and hips has been, game changing for us.
Awesome. And so obviously, I mean, to get the hips moving, you're doing super aggressive, heavy single leg, single arm dumbbell snatches.
No, at least that's not what we're doing. Honestly, going back to what you were saying about equipment, at the space that we're using right now, I'll tell you exactly the equipment that we have because I'm going to go over and teach tonight. We have some bands, we have some dumbbells, we have some mini bands, we have some stability balls, some discs, and a couple medicine balls. That's it.
Couple TRXs?
Oh, sorry. We do have a couple TRXs. That's correct.
I mean, everything you just said could fit in a duffel bag and be $500 total, right?
Or less. Yeah. So you don't need a ton of equipment. What you need is a well-structured program and a system that you can strategically manipulate the progressions of regressions for each individual person. And then to tie this back into our broader conversation, that's one of the reasons why I started teaching the Rehab to Fitness class, is because I wanted to put all of this in a nice little package so that other people that wanted to do stuff like us had a very simple operating system that they could work from. And so we, in our adult fitness class, it's an hour. We do a thorough warm up. We do some power work. We do some strength work. And at the end, I always pick one specific, let's call it developmental position. And we work on some muscle activation stuff relevant to breathing and golf. That's it. It's simple, but even, the 5 weeks we had our first round of classes, we were able to see some of these older adults who really had some mobility deficits, and they still do, but they were able to cut some of those in half just by getting them to move in certain ranges of motion that they hadn't done before.
Yeah.
So it's not about equipment. It's about programming. It's having the knowledge and the understanding to know exactly when and where to intervene. And like you said before, and what you say on your podcast all the time, it's like maximize I just read you say it on a Facebook post, maximize your license. Like, we know a lot of this stuff already. I think a lot of young clinicians just don't have a system to put it all into to make it workable. And that's hopefully what we're teaching them in the Rehab to Fitness course.
Yeah. 2 questions along that line. I'm glad you brought that up, because I think so many people just, with our license, kind of play scared, and there's no need to. If you were coming out of chiropractic college right now, in the next year, what would you do different based upon all the knowledge that you have and all the, you got some calluses from getting hit a couple times, I'm sure. Nobody survives 15 years of practice without some bad stuff, but that totally and then you see also what the market looks like, and going into golf or going into MMA, like all these different sports that when you graduated, MMA wasn't a big deal and golfers weren't working out. So the world has changed, you know?
A ton. I think the one thing I would honestly tell, if I had to do it all over again, is I think I would change my focus. And here's what I mean. I think what we are taught in our model of care as chiropractors is very reactionary. Like, hey, sit in your office and do your marketing and your sporting events, go to races and find people when they're hurt. And I'm saying that's BS. In my mind, I'm having the best luck now and going after athletes to be like, look, what do you want to do? Like, I want to hit the golf ball further. And I go, well, what's limiting you? What do you feel like is your limiting factor to hitting the golf ball further? And he's like, man, I just feel really tight. I was like, okay, well, maybe we can screen your movement and see if there's something that's limiting you from doing this thing that you want to do. And I just start attacking it that way. Usually it doesn't start with pain, but I think you have to have a shift in your mindset. Instead of being reactionary and waiting till people get hurt, let's go out and find ways to make sure they never get hurt in the first place. And when I've started adding that thought process to my mentality, the way I approach my clients and my athletes, really things have started to change and expand for me in ways that I never thought that was possible. So I know, not that I won't treat people when they're in pain, of course I will, but that's not my focus. Like, I want to find ways and methods and systems and processes that we can catch people before things are a problem, correct whatever the issue is, and then start loading them in a way that has meaningful change over time so that 10 years from now, they're not ending up on your table again. I think that would be my biggest thing, is just a shift in mindset.
That's awesome, dude. I think, I agree with that wholeheartedly, because I think from a business perspective too, like if you want to, 5 years in, you want to be making some decent money. You want to see your income go up every year. If you're just playing the reaction game, it's just that constant hustle, like you're saying. I need more new patients, because your job is to get them better and get them done of being a patient, whereas the performance side never ends. They can always get better, I love it.
Well, and I think you said this, and again, I follow.
If it was really good, I said it. If it sucked, it probably,
someone else said it.
Yeah,
no, this was good, and I actually believe you said this, or you've said it in a couple different ways, but like, I mean, use myself as an example. Part of one of my wife's complaints about the way that I practice, and people like us that practice this way, is we're going to find a problem, we're going to correct dysfunction, get you back to baseline, and then like I don't want you coming back every week to my office. If you have to come back to my office every week ad nauseum, I suck. And I either didn't find the problem or didn't come up with a reasonable solution. And so one of the things that's a challenge for people who practice this way is you're constantly having to find new patients. Now, sometimes it's not hard because of word of mouth and referrals, et cetera. But at the same time, like I've had people even recently that I saw for the first time in like 5-6 years. So you're constantly having to find new patients, but where you don't have to find new patients? When you get these people out of pain, you're like, the number one thing I think we could do to make sure this doesn't happen again is start to strategically introduce load to these movement patterns so that over time you're accumulating resistance and tolerance to stress, and you're performing at golf or whatever your activity is in a much more efficient manner. And when you start plugging these people into fitness programs, you don't need to find new patients because they're captured in your program forever. Again, I tell the story of one of my clients named Aaron. I started working with him right out, maybe my first couple years out of school, and he had low back pain, and he also had cancer. And I started training him. It took us about a year to where we got him to where he was training for an hour 3 times a week. And I've been training him for the last 13 years, and he's sent more and more people to my class and my program. So I just have a captured audience. So you want to talk about a practice builder. Adding fitness as part of what you're doing is a way where you don't have to worry about income coming from other sources. You're just providing a astronomical service that these people need anyway, and you're just doing it under your brand and your expertise.
Yeah, that's how it'll be in the, that's how it should be in the future, is that kind of, you see almost every other business moving to a membership model, and there's reason for it. From a business perspective, it allows you to provide great service while also getting paid. And it's tough early on.
We all want to get paid.
Yeah. You don't want to be Netflix on its first year because they were spending money like crazy and not making any, but I think Netflix is doing okay these days.
I think they're doing all right.
Yeah.
And like you said, another example, like we can talk about one of my students and one of yours, and Nolan Clausen. Nolan was in my very first Rehab to Fitness class in October of was it 17 or 18, whatever it was. And he's now opening up his own space in Omaha, a 900 square foot gym. And now he has all the systems in place, not only a business and a marketing system that you gave him, which is fantastic, but now he has the Rehab to Fitness system of operations for fitness, and it's plug and play. And he took all that information, and now he's going to be able to do it in his own community and actually have a model that's workable for people to continue to get better at. It's fantastic. And I think this is the way that we're going to go. And I hope in my own little way that by teaching my class, I can at least help add some systems to a conversation that'll help people be successful in the future.
I love it, dude. I love it. Well, Tom, if people want to sign up for your Rehab to Fitness course, where can they go?
Well, right now we've got some upcoming classes, and you can go to Southeast Sports Seminars. They're the hosting company for my class and my partner in the class. We've got a couple really cool things that we're working on. We have a biomechanical concepts of exercise class that we're going to launch here in about a month, where it's a 3-hour course. So if people want some more information about the biomechanical theories of exercise.
Okay. And that's the same website, Southwest?
Yep, it'll be on Southwest Sports Seminar. So we're kind of using that as an entry. If you just want to get a taste of what we're doing, this is a really good class. And even if you don't follow through with the Rehab to Fitness class, everyone needs to know about some biomechanical things related to exercise. We're also getting ready to launch a video library of all 400 exercises that we go over in the class. And it's basically every progression and regression that we would use in our baseline system of working with clients. So that way, when I teach you the programming template in class and we go over all the exercises, you have a video library that you can use for review, but also you can send exercises to patients. And we're going to launch that in about a month. And then we're also working on, one of the things that we're seeing, and I'm sure you are too, is in a shift in education where a lot more classes are going to be placed online. And so we're working on an option where we're going to have an online Rehab to Fitness class. So that for some reason, if you can't make in-person class, which is always favorable, but if you can't make that, we have an option where people can take it at their own pace, get all the same 20 hours of the modules that we have, and make it more efficient and affordable for most people. So we've kind of got some really cool things we're working on to try to get the message out. But the easiest way to get a hold of us is either through Southeast Sports Seminars, and you could see all of our class dates for 2020, or on social media, Rehab to Fitness on Facebook and Instagram. And if you have any questions, like I said, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to have a conversation about it.
I love it, dude. Well, I'm so excited for all the growth that you've seen over this year. And I'm glad it's kind of funny how things work out. Going into a new sport like golf, I'm sure was a test for your existing systems, right? But they held up fine, which shows you that they work in any sport, right? So people can go into competitive female equestrian, and if that's who they train, then, which wouldn't, by the way, I would totally go into that sport because those parents have money they're willing to part with. Like, you don't put a girl on a horse if you're dead broke.
Sure. Well, I'll also say just one thing is, I also, maybe a piece of advice would be listen to people when they give you specific advice about certain activities or sports. I have to say thank you to yourself. I told you early on, like, dude, I have no interest in golf. And you're like, you're an idiot, because golfers are always hurt and they have money. And you should really think about considering expanding your portfolio of people you work with. And if I was not have taken your advice, I definitely wouldn't be doing the things I'm doing right now and continuing to expand my knowledge base. So just, I didn't say publicly, thank you for help pushing me in that direction, but just listen to people, because people who've been there, sometimes they have some indispensable advice that can help maybe give you a nudge in a certain direction that you may have no idea where that's going to take you. Awesome,
dude. Well, I'm sure everybody listening can help me ensure that I get my 10% of all your earnings from this moment.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Well, Tom, I appreciate the time today. Everyone listening, I think he shared a ton of nuggets. I hope you picked them up and wrote down some notes. whether you want to work with a small team, whether you want to talk about load management or learn the ropes of going from rehab to fitness, appropriately named class, go back and listen because Tom revealed a bunch of pearls here. So on behalf of Dr. Tom Teter out there in Kansas City, Missouri, I am Dr. Josh Satterlee saying go out there, maximize your license, and live the life you dream of. Thanks a lot, Tom.
All right, thanks a lot.
Thanks so much for checking out these videos. I hope they're useful. We'll cover things like rehab, exercise, business model, progressions, layout, everything else that helps you build a clinic. So if you're interested, you can click here, there, here, or anywhere to get more videos just like this. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you soon.